Hey, y'all, I'm Bud Elliott, and this is Cover 3 College Football Summer School. We've done our research on the teams, and now we're bringing on the top team experts from the 24/7 Sports Network to help us fill in the blanks. Please follow us on Twitter at Cover 3 Podcast. That's Cover 3 Podcast. And leave us a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify. All right, class is in session. Hey, guys, I'm Bud Elliott, and welcome back again to the Cover 3 Podcast. This is another summer school edition, and today we're going to talk a little Oklahoma State with GoPokes 24/7's Cody Nagel. Cody, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
No doubt, man. So Oklahoma State last year, a really strong year and another good performance under Mike Gundy, 12-2 overall, top 15 level performance if you look kind of the Vegas power ratings, if you will. Nice comeback win over Notre Dame in the Fiesta Bowl. I imagine the mood there has to be pretty strong.
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely a lot of positive vibes coming off last season. There was some disappointment they weren't able to get that one extra yard there in the Big 12 title game, but being able to come back and beat Notre Dame in the Fiesta Bowl and I'm pretty sure is the biggest comeback in school history, down 21 points there early in the second half or early in the second quarter there. So yeah, being able to beat them there's definitely a lot of hype coming off that going into this season.
I want to start here with the offense. 53rd in offensive efficiency last year. Surprisingly, kind of equal running and passing efficiency wise. In my mind, when I watched them, I was like, okay, they're a better running team than they are a throwing team. But Spencer Sanders was, I guess, effective on the underneath stuff. They just struggled to hit the deep ball with any consistency to create those explosive plays that when Mike Gundy's offenses are good, they're typically pretty good at hitting the explosives. In the last 2 years, just less so. And he had like a fairly decent completion percentage and yet had a whole lot of turnovers. And yet he was a good runner. This is, how do I ask this? Do you think he's going to get a lot better, or is this just who he is and they have to manage around it?
I think he's somewhat progressed and gotten better each season that he's been the starter. I believe this will be his fourth year now going in for this 2022 season. But, yeah, you mentioned the turnovers. Those have always been a big thing, whether it's, fumbles in the pocket or interceptions. The 4 he had in the Big 12 title game obviously stand out. But, he hasn't had a whole lot of help on the offensive line, I think. A lot of those turnovers that he's had have been, on the interceptions especially. He's got a defender right in his face. He's, halfway to the ground on some of those throws. So, whether he should probably just take the sack there instead of trying to make a play, that's probably on him. But, yeah, there's definitely the turnover issue there. And like you mentioned, the deep threat, they haven't really had a big deep threat these past couple seasons. Maybe they can get one of these younger wide receivers to step up and be one of those guys that can, beat corners down the field and get those explosive plays that they've kind of been missing.
As far as guys of consequence who they lost from this offense, I'm looking over this and it has a bit of a Michigan feel to me. And like, hey, Michigan was really good last year, primarily because of the defense, and the offense would do just enough in some crucial situations. But like Michigan, Oklahoma State seems to get a whole lot more back on offense than they do on defense. I mean, they lose Josh Sills, they lose Tay Warren, they lose now the running back whose name escapes me.
Jalen Warren, yeah.
Jalen Warren, excuse me, and what, Tay Martin?
Yeah.
Combine those two guys. That was not good
I know
podcasting.
What you meant,
I feel like almost everybody else of importance is back, right? Like, shouldn't this offense take a step forward?
Yeah, the biggest question again is just the offensive line. They were really, really thin this spring. I believe they only had probably max 10 healthy offensive linemen at one point. And they started to lose a couple to injuries throughout the spring. So, that's the biggest question going into next season is, can they put together a solid offensive line? They're bringing in a few transfers that should help. But yeah, they've got the key pieces there. Obviously Spencer Sanders is back. They've got Dominic Richardson at running back. He's been a backup for the past couple of years. Showed us some few bright spots. Ollie Gordon, the big 4-star freshman coming in, he obviously looks the part. Just whether he can, take his game to the Power 5 level is the big question there with him. And then they've got a ton of young wide receivers. A lot of them that got playing time last year because they were so thin at wideout, and also had some injuries there too. So, they've got guys that have experience, but just the biggest question in my opinion is just the offensive line and whether they can piece together five guys that can stay healthy throughout the year.
For sure. Switching over to the defensive side of the ball, where I think a lot of us thought this would be a good defense. I'm not sure how many people called it would be the number 4 defense in the country in terms of total efficiency. That was a really remarkable performance by them last year.
Yeah, definitely. You talk about Jim Knowles and his system. He was in here for, I believe, 4 years, and they just progressively got better each year. And yeah, last year you kind of thought they'd be a good defense, like you said. I think they would, or I guess I kind of projected them to lead the Big 12, but I didn't expect them to be one of the best defenses in the country. And but yeah, they lose a lot of pieces on that end. Obviously, Jim Knowles is gone now. Derek Mason takes over, coming in from Auburn. That was a really big hire for Mike Gundy. A lot of times when he hires coordinators, they're kind of guys nobody's ever heard of. He'll even go down to the Division 3 level to pick up guys. So for him to get an experienced defensive coordinator and one that's proven to have success pretty much anywhere he goes, that was a big hire for them. But yeah, they definitely lose a lot of pieces. The few that come to mind are Malcolm Rodriguez, the All-American linebacker there in the middle. Then you think about all the guys on the secondary that they lose. Jark Bernard Converse, Christian Holmes, Colby Harvell Peel, Tanner McAllister followed Jim Knowles to Ohio State. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of pieces missing there for sure.
I look at this defense and I think, just looking at the depth chart and the projected depth charts, obviously everybody go read GoPokes247.com. Defensive line should still be okay, I think, as long as it looks like they lost about 1,000 snaps from guys who were listed at defensive tackle, but they would play a little bit of odd front, and some of these quote unquote DNs are like listed at 280, 290. So they should be okay there, right?
Yeah, you bring back Brennan Evers. He's a starter that's been in there a few years. Sione Aussie, also a guy that started a few years. But Tyler Lacey, he's one of those guys that he's a bigger defensive end that you can probably put into the inside if you need, because they've got so many defensive ends and edge rushers. I think of Colin Oliver and his big standout freshman season, and then you get Trace Ford back, who hasn't played since I believe the regular season finale of 2020. So, and he had a pretty big freshman season too in 2019. So, they've got a bunch of edge rushers that they can throw out there, and maybe you put and also Brock Martin, I'm forgetting about him too, another defensive end that had a really good season last year. So, maybe they throw 3 edge rushers out there basically and put Tyler Lacey in the middle and just pass rush the quarterback the whole game. But yeah, they've got more depth on the defensive line. I think that's the area that's probably of less concern when you think about the defense.
Sorry. So which of these units are you more confident in will be able to replace or just avoid a big drop off from the production of last year? So linebacker, they lose Malcolm Rodriguez. They also lose Harper, and those guys combined for almost 1,700 snaps, which I've been doing a lot of these this week. I don't think I've seen any team lose 1,700 snaps at linebackers. Like, those dudes kind of stayed healthy and played just about every damn game and played really well, especially Rodriguez. Or defensive back, which, as you mentioned, they lose 4 out of 5 guys who had 500 plus snaps last year. Like, is there a unit where you're like, they'll actually be okay there, or is the worry kind of equal?
Yeah, I think both those are probably equal. Linebacker, they've got some guys that have played a little bit, obviously not a whole lot when Rodriguez and Harper are playing the entire game and entire season, but they've got some guys there that have a little bit of experience and look pretty good this spring. But in the secondary, you've got Jason Taylor coming back. He always seems to make a big play each game, whether it's an interception or fumble recovery or something. They've got Kendall Daniels, who is a high 4-star guy that I believe he was top 100 prospect. He probably sees the field this season now. He didn't go out there at all last year just because he was kind of a late arrival, but he's big 6'5" safety. So there's obviously a lot of height there. They've got the pieces there again. It's just whether they're proven and can take over for guys that were multi-year starters. So yeah, I think they're probably about even, but if I had to pick one, I'd think linebacker is probably the little bit more of a concern just because of how productive Rodriguez and Harper were for them last year.
It's really been a great rundown. Speaking with Cody Nagel of GoPokes 247.com, our 24/7 Sports Oklahoma State affiliate. I feel like this is a team that a lot of people will write off as just kind of a one-year deal, but Gundy's done such a good job coaching over the years, consistently having them compete. And when things click, can the offense take a big enough step, in your opinion, to offset, I think, the presumed step back of the defense to have them in Big 12 contention again?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, again, it just comes down to Spencer Sanders and how well he plays and how consistent he plays. He had better stretches last year of putting I guess good games together in a row. In prior years it seemed like he'd have a good game and then the next game he'd throw more picks than touchdowns or whatever. But he seemed to get more comfortable, get more in a rhythm. And then obviously towards the end of the season they started to have some injuries on the offensive line that kind of hurt them, and injuries in the backfield with Jalen Warren. But I think the offense can get up to what we've seen in the past with Mike Gundy. Those high-powered offenses that put up. I don't think they're going to put up 50 points a game, but maybe get up to 40 points a game or whatever, just to help balance out the I guess the decline of the defense. I don't think they're obviously going to be as good as they were last year, but I think both units will be pretty solid for sure and get them. They'll definitely be in the race for a Big 12 title game.
I remember reading your injury reports and especially the pregame reporting at GoPokes, and it's like, man, the early games I felt like Sanders was kind of screwed just because all the receivers and tight ends that were out at times. Like the Boise game, weren't they missing like a ton of skill position guys? And late in the year, the O-line injuries. I don't know, man. Like I don't really trust Spencer Sanders, but I do trust Mike Gundy enough to where I think counting this team out is the wrong move.
Yeah, they're definitely going to be a top 25 team. I mean, I think we've got them at 25 today on our post spring rankings or whatever. But I think they'll work their way up into those rankings. They always seem to be a team, like you said, that people kind of write off or whatever at the beginning of the year, and then you get back or get into November or whatever, and they're sneaking into the top 10. And last year I don't think anyone really expected after those first three non-conference games when they're barely beating Missouri State, Boise State, and Tulsa that they'd be in the playoff consideration there at the end of November. But so yeah, I think they'll be a top 25 team for sure. And who knows, this could end up being another one of Mike Gundy's better coaching years for sure.
No doubt about it. Yeah, I look back at my notes. I bet they're over last year. I did not think that ticket would cash by Halloween. So
yeah,
that was very fun. Cody, really appreciate the time today. Everybody needs to go check out GoPokes 24/7, especially if you are an Oklahoma State fan or a Big 12 fan. We'll have to have you on soon.
All right, sounds good. Appreciate you.
All right, that's the bell. Cover 3 College Football Summer School is over for today, but don't worry. We'll be back soon with even more episodes filling you in on the top teams in college football. Please give us those 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Follow us on YouTube and on Twitter at Cover 3 Podcast, and we'll see you all soon.